God gave rock and roll to you, gave rock and roll to you, put it in the soul of everyone.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Vodcast. Your host, Mike Tiff, Rex Metzer, and myself. Today, friends, it's a treat. We are welcoming the one and only Dale Stryker and Joey Knight of Stryken. And maybe Ezekiel Vade will join us a little bit later. That's kind of up in the air. Yeah, fingers crossed. So, Dale, Joey, welcome. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Yes, we're privileged. Gentlemen, we have a million and one questions for you guys with Stryken and Stryker. Before that, we're just going to dive right in, and we like to start from square one. So Dale and Joey, if you don't mind, just tell us about your musical influences. Did each of you come from a musical household?
Dale?
All right. Well, I always let Joey go first. He's our band historian. So if you want the facts, you get them from Joey. If you want opinions or what we think might have happened, you ask me. So you're talking about musical influence in our household.
Was there music, Dale?
Yeah, for you personally.
Households, was music played as a family, or did you hear a lot on the radio?
My mom played piano. God rest her soul. She passed away a couple of years ago. She also sang, and she played piano in the church. My dad was a Baptist preacher, so that's kind of goes hand in hand, right? The wife plays the piano, and at least in those days. But other than her, that was pretty much it in our household until Mom bought Steve and I some acoustic Yamaha guitars, which was, I don't know what year that was. I would have been about 14 and a half, 15 years old. So a long, long time ago.
Why don't you tell them how your mother bought those guitars? How you found out?
Yeah, there's our historian. So actually, my parents divorced, and so you had a single mom, 4 kids, driving a school bus, working in a print shop, getting up and working at 5 a.m. till God knows when. And we wanted these guitars, and we couldn't afford them. I think she was making something like $2,500 a year at the time. So not a lot of money. So she has a rare blood type. I think it was like A negative or something, which was worth money. So she went, bought the guitars, and for 2 years, I didn't find this out till like, I don't know, maybe 20 years later, maybe longer. She went and bought these guitars. Payments were $7 a piece a month, $14. And she did that and gave blood for 2 years to pay for our guitars. Excuse me, it kind of chokes me up a little bit just talking about it, but a great sacrifice. Never even told us, how it went down. Joey might remember more about the story, but that's the way I remember it.
That's all I remember from that.
So you could say your start in this was bought by blood, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Joey, what about you, buddy? What about in your household? Was there a lot, whether the radio or family members playing music? Did you grow up around music?
You're going to find out that I have such a bizarre, weird, unique life. From what I understand, my introduction was my mother would tell me these stories after I got into drumming. She would tell me that when I was about 1.5, we would go to my aunt's house, and they would find me in the kitchen pulling pots and pans out and like smacking on them. My actual first recollection was, and it kind of freaks my mom out because I can give her details about all this. I was about 2.5, 3 years old. And I'm originally from Mexico. I was born in Mazatlan, Mexico. There was a club restaurant that my grandfather loved going to after church. And there's 2 recollections I have of that. Is he would always give me the olives out of his martini, which I guess explains a lot of things. And I remember this one time looking at this little stage, and there were instruments and a drum set. And I remember just being so fascinated with the drums. I wanted to get up there. I wanted to climb up there and just grab the sticks and start hitting them. And, but as far as anybody being musical in my family, there was nothing like that was influencing me. My recollection is when we moved to the States, my mother was absolutely in love with music. So I would grow up, I would get up in the morning listening to AM radio in the 60s. And I tell people today, especially the young kids, you have no idea how sorry I feel for you, because I was the one getting to hear Motown as it was happening. I got to hear Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff as it happened. These were sounds that were like alien to everybody at the time. So my mom was constantly listening to radio and singing to the radio. And so that was kind of like the start of my whole path, if you will.
Okay, while you guys are talking about your early lives, history, whatnot, could each one of you touch a little bit on what your upbringing was like in relation to faith? Now, Dale, I know you said your dad was a pastor, so maybe just flesh that out a bit for us.
Okay. Yeah, son of a Baptist preacher, and he was Southern Baptist, Independent Baptist, went to that, Conservative Baptist, something else, Fundamentalist Baptist. So we went kind of all the Baptist things, trying to, anyway, it was kind of crazy. But, and actually, when I actually got saved at age 7 in his church, but he wasn't preaching at the time, which he didn't, I don't know if he didn't really appreciate it, or he's like, oh, I can't believe the only child of mine that got saved by somebody else. And I'm like, I think it's not saved by you. I don't think you can save me, Dad. I don't think that's it. But there was a guy named an evangelist came through named Lester Roloff. I don't know if you remember Lester Roloff. He ran a bunch of teen camps and stuff in Texas and other states. If you look him up, by the way, he's in one of the songs too. He's in One Way. There's a reference in there to him that's subtle, but
What's the reference, Dale?
Pardon me?
What's the reference?
It says roll off to the left side of the bed, roll off to the right side. It's actually Lester Roloff. And that song's actually about my family, because my dad got kind of mixed up on what they call nowadays is I guess a drugstore junkie, right? So the doctor prescribes drugs, and you get hooked on those drugs, right? So that's kind of what happened. But anyway, but long story short, I wrote that song about that, and so that's kind of a little background.
It's a great song, incidentally. So
yeah.
And honestly, look, the cool thing about that reference to Lester Roloff is the story goes like this, and you got to understand, I heard these stories a million times back then, right? So Lester Roloff went and found his dad strung out. And so he took him to a hotel room to dry out. And that's why it's
small town in Texas. Yep.
Yeah. That's why it says roll off to the left side, roll off to the right side, because every time you turn on that bed, there was Lester Roloff right there. And
Lester Roloff stayed with him. The way I say it, he stayed with him and prayed with him for like 7 days. Yeah. He just dropped everything he was doing, found him, locked him down, said, no, you're going to get off this stuff. This is not going to work. So that's kind of I guess you call it intervention, right, Joey? I guess that's kind of an intervention.
That's what you call friendship.
Yeah.
That's what you call someone that cares enough about someone that says, I don't care what you're going to think of me after this, but I'm going to do this. That's what friendship is to me. It's not someone that leaves you hanging dry and leaves comments about you in social media. Anyway, that's a whole other story.
So Dale, now you mentioned, okay, your dad going through this, and You mentioned that your parents ended up divorcing. So how did some of those things that happened to you in your growing up years affect your own faith journey? Or did
My
they?
own what? I'm sorry.
Your own faith journey, how did those things affect?
It's pretty interesting because you have there's two directions you take, right? One is you could, because the family split, I'm the oldest boy. There's a lot of pressure on me. I actually played football. I had to quit football. My mom said, we can't pay the bills. I need you to go to work after school and weekends and stuff. So, and you're 14 and a half, 15, you're thinking like, well, I guess I was 16 when that happened because I'd played as a sophomore. Yeah, football. And then she's like, you can't really, I really need you to do that. Like, so there's two paths you take. You either get angry at God for a while, like, hey, why, this is happening, or you turn to God, right? You're closer, right? So it's pretty interesting because I'd actually not read the entire Bible through, Genesis to Revelation until that happened. After my parents' divorce and stuff, I'm like, I don't get this, I guess I'm just going to see how this whole thing plays out. Right. But the fact of the matter is things happen in a family, right? I don't care whether you're Christians or not. It's naive to think that, I'm going to get saved and everything's going to be great and rosy and sweet. That's not, if you read the Bible cover to cover, that's not exactly how it happens. You might actually find yourself in prison. You might find yourself beaten, stoned, all kinds of bad stuff can happen. So I actually turned, in fact, when I was younger, I actually thought I'd be a preacher. My dream was to be a pastor. But now that never came to fruition. I did preach a couple of times in my dad's church when the was closed. I'd be up there, and I'm tired of these wishy-washy, blow hard, blow cold Christians, blah, blah, blah. I remember that I remember saying that. And I was like, I don't know, 9 or something, and just doing that. And I was like, I don't think this is really for me. I don't think I'm very good at that. So I think it was positive. I mean, not that I didn't have some down times, because you do, but it kind of drove me closer. And Steve and I were like really, really tight, in high school. And even after that, we stayed pretty tight as a result of that. Right.
Okay. So Joey, how about you?
All right, get your coffee because here it comes.
I got my monster, buddy.
Hey, there you go. It's very, very interesting on my walk. Is I think I was about 3, maybe 4 years old. It wasn't a physical thing, but ever since I was that age, for some unknown reason, I have always known that God has existed. And I don't know how. Like I said, it wasn't like he appeared to me or someone said it to me. It was always, and I hate to use the term, but it was a feeling that I knew that he was there. When I was about 5, about 2 years after we moved back to the States, my grandmother made it a point to take me to church. I was raised Catholic. And she made it a point that if my parents weren't going to be taking me to church, she was going to take me to church. So she would take me every Sunday. She made sure that she took me every Sunday. From that, I think I was about 8 or 9. I became an altar boy in the Catholic Church. And one thing that after about 3 or 4 years, I had spent so much time serving in that church that they made 2 of us the quote head of the altar boys. And I would spend so much time sitting in the pews, staring up at the massive crucifix that was there. And I would just sit there because I felt closest to God when I was in that environment. And I felt a need to be there, almost to the point, well, not almost, but to the point where I was constantly telling my parents, I need to go serve. I need the 5:15 mass today. I got to go serve. And so they would take me and I'd make sure I get there about 4:30, 4:45, and then I would find out who was serving at 5:15, and I'd call them and say, hey guys, we don't need you today. Thanks, bye. Boom. So I practically was an employee for that church, if you will. But there was something about the environment where I had to be there, and I needed that closeness with him. We moved from I was raised in Nogales, Arizona, the border town in Arizona, and my dad got a job in Tucson, so we had to move. We thought it was like moving to another state, but it was only like 45 minutes away. So we moved up there, and that's when everything went upside down for me, and I discovered Kiss. And so
who was that? Was that the first girl? Was you kissed the girl? That was the first thing? Oh, the band Kiss. I got it. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a whole other story there.
Not here to talk about that one. So
yeah. So that's basically the introduction to my walk, my faith, if you will, of how it all started. To be quite honest, when I joined Stryker, I was just short of my 17th birthday or something like that. Or it was after, I auditioned for Stryker when I was 16. And they gave me the old Spanish elbow, and didn't hear from them for like 4 months.
I don't know if that's true. I don't.
No, it's not true.
It's true, but it's complicated. It's complicated, Joey.
But here's the weird thing is, when I did join the band, there was no talk of Christianity, if you will. There was not like the quote Stryker story where, oh, we held Bible studies in our garage kind of thing. We were a band. We showed up at 3:30 every afternoon, and we rehearsed for 4 or 5 hours Monday through Thursday, and that was it. What was funny about it, and Dale is going to have a good laugh about that, is the bass player at the time is the one who cornered me one night after practice. And he corners me, he says, hey man, if you want to stay in this band, you're going to have to be a Christian. And I looked at him and I said, well, I am a Christian. He goes, no, you're going to have to become a Christian. I'm thinking in my head, I'm a Catholic, I'm Christian. What is this dude talking about? There was no other real talk after that. And it wasn't until there was these decisions made afterwards that it was after Dale got married, and he had to move to Texas from Arizona because there was no work in the Tucson area. So he needed to find work, and his mom had moved, what was it, about a year prior to Austin?
Correct. Yeah. And my sister was already there. And
yeah. So she was letting him know, hey, there's jobs here. There's so much stuff going on. So he was like, that's the only logical move. So he moves in May of '82. And about 2 months later, it gets, I get hit with the whole, well, guess what, dude? We're moving to Austin, Texas. And if you want to continue being in the band, you're going to have to go too. I'm just like getting out of high school going, I thought, well, what's going on here? but God is always masterful in how he does things. And it's funny how we see the whole hindsight thing, right? In September of '82, with much anguish from my parents, especially my mom, that I said, hey, I'm moving. And so I bought a ticket on a Greyhound bus, and all my equipment went underneath the bus and had a 24-hour ride to Austin, Texas.
Look away, it's a long time. Look ahead, it's a hard time.
long story short, it was about 3 weeks later. I was living in a small apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. Dale and his bride in one bedroom, his mother in another, and I was sleeping in the living room floor. So I was waiting for a friend of mine to get home. And I'm sitting there, and I just glanced over and I saw this book. It was Hal Leonard, not Hal Leonard, I'm thinking guitar. Hal Lindsey, the late great Planet Earth.
Yeah.
I saw that movie when I was 7 years old at the drive-in. And I was like, wow, I remember that movie. So I grabbed the book and I start flipping through it, and it starts making me think. So I start asking a lot of questions, start opening up the Bible, imagine that, and then realizing, okay, everything that I've been taught all those years in the Catholic Church, there are things that they left out. There are things that aren't true. And that's when the whole realization came in. And I believe the Holy Spirit was showing me the truth and drawing me in at that time. And that's when I accepted Christ and became born again at 18. So that was my journey to Christ.
Very cool. Very cool. So, gentlemen, did you meet Dale and Stephen then? And the former bass player, was there an ad or something that was put out that you answered, and that's when you got the elbow for a while? Is that how y'all first met, was through an ad?
We met, like I said, I was 16, about a month before a few weeks before my 17th birthday. It was summertime. We were out of school. I was a drummer in the marching band, and one of my drummer buddies calls me up, and he says, dude, well, back then we didn't say dude, right? He says, hey, I found these guys. I called them up. I wanted to do something as a hobby for the summer. He says, but these guys are very serious. And I said, okay. I said, tell me about them. He says, I saw an ad in the paper, and it's a Christian band. And I'm like, Robert, I said, wait a minute. Now, keep in mind, okay, I'm not in that mindset, right? I go, a Christian band? I said, what is a Christian band?
Yeah,
said,
thank you. What is that?
I said, what do they do? Rock versions of Kumbaya? I said, I said, explain that to me. He goes, no. They're professionals. They've got recordings. They got a single out, and they're very, very serious about making it. And he says, it's just too serious for me. He says, I just wanted to do something for the hobby. And he says, I talked to them about you. And I'm like, I don't know. This sounds a little bizarre to me. And I said, and he says to me, so you need to call him. I said, Robert, I said, why do I need to call him? He goes, because I told him you would. I'm okay. So any normal guy would be like, dude, just leave me alone. Okay. Go enjoy your summer. But for some reason I felt like this thing on me going, you need to call these guys. So I called them, spoke to this guy that was a rep of theirs. Back then they had a rep. Talked to him a little bit, told him my background and so forth. He says, okay. He says, I'll call you back and let you know when we can get something set up. We're in the middle of auditioning other drummers right now. So he calls me back, I think a day later. He says, okay, I've got next Saturday open at this time. I think it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. Well, the thing is, it was my birthday.
Happy birthday.
So I'm turning 17. I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, there's nothing going on that day. You're 17 years old, your parents really aren't going to go out of their way to do anything. So I tell my mom and said, hey, I need to borrow the car, which happened to be a blue Ford station wagon. I said, I need to borrow the car.
Perfect for drones.
What's that?
Perfect for drones.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, I need to borrow the car. There's a group out in Marana, which was about, what was it, Dale? About 30, 40 minutes from.
Yeah, 30, 35 miles, maybe 40, 45 minutes to drive it. Up
Yeah.
by 10.
Yeah. I guess God was getting me prepared for my future in living in Houston, because everything is 45 minutes away here. So she's frantic, going, no, you can't do it. No. And I'm like, but I'm just going to go out there 4:00. I'm going to do the audition and I'll be back. So after this long back and forth, she's like, okay, fine. Just as long as you're back by 6. I said, okay, fine. I'll be back. Go out there. I met the guy. Well, I went to their apartment first and met the guys. And so we're going to drive out to the rehearsal place, which happened to be a house where the living room was completely just amps and guitars and stuff. And they said, okay, go ahead and get set up. So I went ahead and set up. And since I'd never heard anything by these guys, they started asking me, well, do you know this song? And we were going through like some cover songs first. I guess they wanted to get a feel for me. And so we started, I think Another Brick in the Wall was one of the songs. Hot Child in the City was another one. And I don't remember what the other ones were. And so they said, okay, so now we want to do a couple of our originals. So just, jump in when you get a chance. Okay. Well, the Stryker music compared to the Stryken music, it's like comparing Queen and ELO to Twisted Sister. Their stuff was so ridiculously it was like simple but yet complicated at the same time. It was so melodic, but there were so many complexities in throughout the music. And of course, Steve, these two, I never knew till years later, these two guys had a background in playing drums in high school.
Yeah, we
So-
both played drums in high. It was
So-
actually our first instrument.
So Steve would start, no. Play this. I'd be, huh? And so I try to play anyway, we went through the rehearsal. They look at me and go, well, tell you what, we're going to go talk, and why don't you go ahead and just, load up your kit. So I go load up my kit, and one of them comes out and gives me the old, hey, don't call us, we'll call you. Right? I drive home. It's like 9:00 at night already.
Monsoon season, isn't it?
It's monsoon season. If you guys don't know what a monsoon is, usually in Arizona, about 4:30, clouds start rolling over the mountains, dark clouds. And then about 5, boom, you get hit with rain, lightning, thunder, and all that stuff. So we got hit in the middle of rehearsal with lightning and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of dragged things out a little bit. So I get home about 9:00 that night. I walk in, and my mother has this look on her face, and I'm looking at her. I said, I'm sorry. It ran longer. She goes, just go to the back. So our house had this section in the back, which was kind of like a den. 6 of my friends are sitting there waiting on me for 3 hours for a surprise party.
Oh.
Joey's mom is the sweetest, most awesome lady you'd ever want to meet. She's fantastic. And she was patient too. She had some patience with you.
He told her
Not that night.
he
Not that
told her
night.
6 o'clock, and it was 9. I bet she was worried about the monsoon, and
Well, back in the day when there were no cell phones, if
Right.
there wasn't a landline near you, there was no way you could call or text, right? So
Joey, I want to make a comment. I've never said this before, but I knew that night that you were the guy. I knew it, but we just couldn't it wasn't unanimous. So just for the record.
now
That's the way I remember it.
Now, in all honesty, guys, let me just say this: I sucked back then. No, seriously, I did because just to give you a brief background, the way I even got started playing drums was in 7th grade in Nogales. Showed up to the first day of 7th grade, and I don't know if this was the same with you guys, but at our junior high, you would start off with like a home group of students, and basically the majority of you would go to the same classes throughout the day. Well, one of the things I had signed up, or I don't even remember signing up for this. I think maybe it was like part of the curriculum where it was like music. And there was a new teacher for band and music. And he's handing out these 3x5 cards to every student. And he says, hey guys, listen, I just need to get you guys up to date. He says, I really need some students in band. I really need some students. So if you guys are interested in band, just put your name and the instrument that you play or want to play, and I'll get with you. So I'm looking at I signed my name, and he's picking up cards and stuff. And I looked up at him and I go, I don't know what instrument to put down. He goes, just put drums. Okay. So I handed it to him. So next thing I know, my mother is going with me to go get a snare drum. You have to go, bring your own snare drum. And I'm having, here I am. I'm learning drums now out of nowhere.
Joey doesn't know what he's doing. Here I am,
Dude. This started what am I looking for? So in full disclosure, I really don't know how to read music. So the only thing I know how to do well is to listen, and I can reproduce it. That's how I've always done music. So I would listen to the other drummers. I'd look at the music and I'd be like, what are they doing? So I'd be listening. And then I would just start mimicking, right? So the funny thing about the story is this band teacher, he would always walk in the morning and he'd be twirling sticks on both hands. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn how to do that. So one day during lunch, I walked in and I said, hey, could you teach me how to do that? How do you do that? So he taught me how to twirl these sticks. So my mom and dad were not able to get me to band practice because we had to be there like 7:30 in the morning ahead of the school bus. So he talked with my parents and he says, look, I live about 2 miles from you guys. I pass by there every day. If he makes sure that he is there on the corner, I will pick him up. Sure enough, comes pulling up in his little Volkswagen Rabbit hatchback, and I'd climb in the back and boom, we'd head straight to school. I would hear stories from him of how he played these Hollywood parties and did shows and did this and that. One day I asked him, I said, what was the name of the group you were in? I said, well, you're in the group? He says, yeah, it was called Love and Spoonful.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Who'da thunk?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was he was the bass player in Love and Spoonful, but I think it was like after the original group. I think the bass player had left, and he was put in as the new bass player. So that's what started everything. But I did not get a drum set till I was a sophomore in high school. $125 for my birthday. Went down to the local music store with my mom and started looking at drum kits, $900, $1,000. And I'm holding my $125 going on. Can I buy a stand, please? And what was so bizarre, again, I say it's bizarre. God says it's my perfect plan. I'm overhearing a guy at the counter trying to sell his drum kit to the store. They don't want it. So he overhears me also talking to, what would it cost and this and that. I've only got this much money. I'm walking out with my mom. He comes out. He says, "Hey, you want a drum kit?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Let me show you what I got." So he opens up the trunk. It's a beat up old Ludwig, dude. And the symbol for it looks like a trash can that got beat for the last 20 years, right? And I said, "What? How much would you take on that?" He says, "You got $125?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll take that." Sold. Boom. Now the problem with that was it was a beat up kit. It had that trash can lid for a ride cymbal. There was no hi-hat. The bass drum beater was like on its last leg kind of thing. So I actually spent more time on a chair pretending it was a drum kit, playing to, all this different kind of stuff, more than I did on that kit. So when I actually auditioned for Stryker, like I said, it was summertime and I was in really good with the band teacher, and he allowed me to take some sections of the drum kit from the jazz band home so I could put it with my kit, like the cymbals and stuff like that. So I was using this Frankenstein kit when I went in audition for them, but I did not have the technical aspect to be able to play. I just played technically with a lot of heart. I just wanted to play, but I didn't have the ability to, play in certain type of deals. So when I knew for sure that I did not get that position, that weekend, I remember talking to my a buddy of mine who was the jazz drummer there at school. The dude was a phenom. So he and I spoke, and I said, "Yeah, I think I blew this audition." And he says, "You know what? Look, you're the guy I want to take over for jazz band when I leave." He says, "You've got a lot of heart." He says, "But I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to teach you how to play." Cool. And he lived like a couple of blocks away from me, so I'd walk to his house. He realized that I didn't have the aptitude to read. So he says to me, he says, "Come here." He said, hands me a cowbell, hands me a drumstick, puts on Serpentine Fire by Earth, Wind, and Fire. He says, "I want you to feel what they're playing." He says, "Don't play what you think they're playing. Feel it." That's all I did all summer with him. Playing a cowbell, learning the aspect of what feel is. So it was it was November. I auditioned for them in July, and in November, I get a phone call. I think it was Steve, maybe, was calling me. He says, "Hey, man, just wondering if you were still interested in auditioning." I'm like, it's been like 4 months. And I'm like, this is weird. I said, sure, why not? So they brought all their equipment this time to my house, and they never left after that. So I guess I got the gig.
That is awesome. Here we go with Stryker, and you guys, each of you had adopted stage names for performing or while performing. Were the stage names, gentlemen, were they adopted? Dale and Steven Stryker, the brothers Joey Knight and Easy or Ezekiel Vade. How early in your career were each of these names adopted, and how did each of you go about choosing your respective stage names?
Joey might have he's the historian. He might have the answer. What, my recollection is Steve and I talked about it early. We always wanted to have some type of stage name. In fact, when all the songs that are copywritten, all of them have both our names on them. They have your stage name, and they have the legal, your legal name, your birth name. And I think, Joey, we started that pretty quick. Early 80s, but I don't know exactly when. Joey might know exactly when because he's the historian again, but it was pretty early on. I don't know if we put them on anything prior to, not the first 45, not in the 70s, late 70s, but in the 80s, I think we did. Joey, do you remember? Of course you do.
You hear me take a long breath here? No.
When Joey says brief, don't buy it. It's not.
Okay, so the stage names actually came for Dale and Steve. It was when we became Stryken. That's when the names changed for Dale and Steve. And I had been with them since 81, something like that. So we'd already been together for like 5 years. So when they came to me and said, we're going to change our last name to Stryker, I was like, okay, well then I'll change my last name to Stryker. And Steve looks at me and goes, you're not a brother. Dale and Steve and I, Dale and I are brothers. You're not. And I took offense to that. I was like, what? No. And my last name actually came years before. I was hanging with a friend of mine in Austin who did weekend graveyard shifts at the Christian radio station, which at the time was a little shack in back of someone's house. And so I go and hang out with him, and he says, hey, you want to do the weather? And I was like, you want me to do the weather? He goes, yeah, do the weather. I said, okay. And he was using an alias for his DJ name. And just like seconds before I'm about to read the thing, I looked at him and I go, what name should I use? He goes, call yourself Joey Knight. I said, okay. Hey, this is Joey Knight here on Candle. And that's where it came from. And when we were changing our last names, it was just like a natural progression for me to go, okay, well, I'll do Joey Knight.
Do you all?
We actually created the Ezekiel Vade name. Remember, Joey?
Yeah.
We created that. We didn't have because we were in the transition on the bass player side, and we're like, okay. And the bass player, that'll always be the guy's name. It'll look different. It could be a blonde and brunette. We don't really care. It could change 3 times, but they always be the same name. So nobody's going to be confused. Like, they had the same guy, Ezekiel Vade for the whole. Oh, he always looked different, but this guy's 6'4", this guy's 5'5". But so we actually created that name. Sound like a good name. But.
Yeah.
Well, guys, am I mistaken? Or the first official recorded release of the band, Stryker released a single under the Stryker name as far back as 1979. Is that correct? Am I mistaken, or is that correct?
No, that's correct. In fact, it was actually, and this is kind of funny when Joey's talking about some of the music. If you listen to like I'm All Right and It's Over on the Blitzkrieg album. And then you go back to that 45, that single, which was On the Phone As the Rain Goes. We were classified then when we first released those. We released them on a label called Burke Records, which I always thought was kind of funny because the guy was like, I said, what does that stand for? He goes, Big Important Record Company. I'm, oh, okay. That was our first label, was Burke. But we were actually classified as either new wave or power punk back in the day. So we're more like, they say, oh, they're like the Cars. They're like the Knack. I don't know if you remember those bands or not.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. But if you listen to those, you know, that's the kind of songs that were. The thing I didn't like about that was a 45, is all released at that time. But the thing I didn't like about that, and I'm sure Joey listened to it later, but the guy had this idea that we'd record it and then he'd speed it up just a little bit. But when you do that, you sound like the Chipmunks, right? So, hey, can you slow that back down? Like like the way we record, it's like, I'm the producer, you know, we're going to do it my way. Like, oh, okay, whatever. But we think it sucks, but whatever you want to do. You know, but you can feel some of that as the band kind of transitioned. You know, we had a lot of, you know, we had over, I don't know, Joe, what the number was. We had 204 originals. And unfortunately, we probably recorded, we got those 18, well, maybe 20, 22 of them. And we just found, by the way, we just found 7 that we recorded, never released.
Wow.
On some tapes. I had the 2-inch reels all taken in. So that's kind of a cool thing. So you might hear some of those, and you heard it here first. They might come out at some point. So,
And I hope that they do. That's awesome news. In fact, I just wrote down 7 songs. I'm trying to make a note here, Dale.
Okay. Well, let me say this before we finish. I never answered your question, which is sometimes happens. But your question was released in 79. The stuff was written in the late 70s. You know, I know it was recorded in 79. I don't know if we got it out in late 79, if it was January of 80, but it was right there when that came out. Yes, sir.
So, Dale, you were lead guitar and vocals, and your brother Steven listed as vocals, guitar, and keyboard. Dale, were you the primary lead vocalist, or was Steven?
We were actually co-lead vocalists. So yeah, so we split the duty there pretty evenly, I think.
Yeah.
All the time. And you know, Joey would sing backup and some others. And of course, Joey has a great voice. You know, in hindsight, we should have leveraged that more. We were just going down a path. Oh, I got 200. Let's just go. You know, we just do things sometimes we didn't think as well. But we had some great 4-part harmonies, and you know, in fact, one of the ones
on Right of Way.
That'd be me.
Okay, I wanted to bring that song up in particular, in getting more into Stryken. Now, Joey, you mentioned you came into Stryker circa 81. That's when you got on board.
Right.
The Stryker album Blitzkrieg
Mm-hmm.
was released in 1983.
Correct.
Right.
And gentlemen, I have never heard Blitzkrieg until 2021. I had your all's Red Collector's tape in hand as Stryken back in the late 80s, but I'd never heard Blitzkrieg before, and
Yeah.
I am absolutely infatuated with that material, and there's good reason why. Would like to talk about this album here. Circus Man, Right of Way, which is my absolute favorite of you guys. Love Circus Man, love Right of Way, Cross the Line, Need Your Love. I mean, that to me, Need Your Love has such a Queen vibe to it. That's just my listening experience. Forgive me if y'all beg to differ, but
No, I'll take that anytime we have anything compared to Queen, right, Joey? We'll take that one. Right?
Dale and Joey, not only Queen, but I'm also hearing elements of T-Rex, Sweet, Queen, Martha Hoople, Early Kiss, and Bowie's Ziggy Stardust within the material. Not just the Stryker stuff, but also to some extent the Stryken stuff, but more so with Stryker. Gentlemen, I love all those bands. And Joey, I cut my teeth I love Early Kiss. I love the music of the original Early Kiss.
Yes.
And all these other bands I love too. Would that be a fair assessment with the Stryker material, what I'm describing, some of those influences?
think it'd be spot on, Joey. I mean, we listened to a lot of other stuff. I mean, we loved, Joey's a big Journey fan. I was a big Kansas fan. Of course, I listened to UFO, Nugent, you know, a lot of other kind of stuff as well. But I mean, you name it, we probably listened to it. And so I guess that, you know, Styx and Foreigner. So there were all kinds of things that influences. The one that was interesting that you mentioned to me is Motley Crue, because I say that all the time to people for 30 years, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. Is that a made up name? No, it's a real thing. It's a real band.
All the young dudes.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, if you listen to our early stuff, the Stryker stuff,
Mhm.
especially, and people have not heard this. Look, let me be upfront about something here. I'm so thankful. I'm thankful beyond measure that someone can actually sit down and listen to Blitzkrieg or even the Stryken record and say, man, I like that. I'm digging it. You know, I genuinely like this stuff. I don't like listening to it because there were so many issues with the production on both albums that it's hard for me to listen to what I knew what we were trying to achieve with it, and just felt like on our faces with production wise. What people have not heard, like number one, people have never heard the single of As the Rain Goes and On the Phone. Okay, when people hear it, it's going to blow their minds going, these are the same guys. The 4-song demo before Blitzkrieg was done, the demo was done, what, in 81, Dale?
81. Yeah, we released it in 81, recorded it. Yeah, 81.
Yeah.
That was Westwood Studios, wasn't it? I think, out of Tucson.
Yes, yeah. That 4-song demo it will smoke Blitzkrieg because it's got the songs you like. It's got Right of Way on there, which we re-recorded, but it's got a song on there called A Man that Steve did, Playing on the Radio, which was one of our like signature songs that we would do as Stryker. When I talk about that, they would bring me drum parts to play on these songs. That song alone frustrated the living daylights out of me when I was first learning it, because it's so intricate what Steve exactly wanted on that song. That 4-song demo is insane. When I heard the single and the 4-song demo for the first time, it was actually a week prior to them coming to my house to, quote, re-audition me. They brought me all their original material to say, here you go, learn the songs, and we're going to rehearse them. And I'm sitting there going, man, this guitar player sounds like Terry Livgren, because you heard that influence just coming out of Dale. But it was in a way where you heard the influence, but you didn't hear him trying to be Terry Livgren. It was just the influence, right? So it was a natural thing for us when we were Stryker and we would go do shows. We would do like 1 or 2 songs that were current on the radio as covers. And then we would do People of the Southwind by Kansas. And Dale would shine on that song because it was just in his element to do that song. And like I said before, you know, we did Hot Child in the City, which Steve would sing really well. Another Brick in the Wall. We did I Love Rock and Roll, and those kind of songs. Rick Springfield, list goes on, right? So when you talk about those influences, when I look back at our history of where we were at the time, I can say that I still get a little frustrated in realizing there are some songs that the world will probably never, ever hear, because there were songs that we would rehearse or were coming into be that would just blow everybody's stinking mind. Steve wrote a song called Poison the War Song.
Yeah,
And
Poison.
when you talk about a Queen song, it was the Bohemian Rhapsody of Stryker. There was so many vocal parts that were happening at the time. The element of this is the genius of Steve, okay? And I should say also the genius of Stryker. You had Steve and Dale as the primary songwriters. And like you said, there were about 204, 205 songs already written when I came into the picture. When you would hear the songs, when you'd hear our rehearsals, you would notice that Steve was always the more Cars driven, Billy Squier driven, ELO, Queen. Dale was more the Kansas guy, the UFO guy. So when you had those two mixtures going on at the same time, it was just magic. It was just real magic at the time. And that's why when I see the transition of going from that to who we became, it was like, oh man, if we had just stuck to our guns and just stayed where we were, stayed in our lane, if you will, I think things would have been a whole different other story.
So with that in mind, talk to me a little bit about, I mean, obviously there's a substantial difference between the Blitzkrieg Stryker material,
right,
and then the Stryken
First strike.
yeah. Not only in the earlier stuff being maybe a little bit more in a new wave vein or something along those lines, and seemingly, as far as I could tell, more along just secular type material, and then with the Stryken material more overtly Christian and more on the metal side. So just kind of talk to me a little bit about how that transition came about or what led to that.
Well, Dale, if you let me say something here real quick and then you take it from there. When you talk about Stryker being a little more on the secular side, right? This band was doing things long before anybody else was doing things. When I joined Stryker, I did not know the terminology Christian band. I never knew at the time that there were other bands that were like Res Band. I never knew of those guys. Sweet Comfort Band. I never knew of those guys because I wasn't brought up in that. So I never knew these bands ever existed. I never knew anybody existed like us till the whole, the Boys in California thing, right? And then I was like, there's other guys like this. But here's the thing. These guys were already writing music with double meanings in it.
Okay.
If you listen to the lyrical content of even Surprise, listen to Surprise. Steve had this knack for writing stuff that he could tell you a story, but you didn't realize he was pointing you to Christ. Dale was exactly the same way with the lyrical content, talking about certain things, and you thought it was a secular storyline, but really it's a Christian storyline. But it was done in a way to where people weren't alienated when they would listen to the music, and they would completely understand the whole aspect of what the song was. And once it drew the people in, and they would come see the show and stuff, and they would get to actually talk with us, then the light bulb would actually go off with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was threaded through all of it. I mean, there was tons of references to "I Found a Better Way." There, when Steve talks about in what's the song? Oh, and it's over where he says, I am looking to the Son. It's the Son of God, because the next line says, to be blind was not much fun. Right. And you can do it. I mean, just, they're all through there. The end of I Need Your Love, you're knowing now, and you're reaching upwardly and knowing now, wow, I need your love. Well, that transitions to I need your love. I need the love of God. Right. So there was a lot of things like that, which we could then talk about. Now, I do want to go on a little tangent here. Some of the other, I don't remember, Joey, how you did, but I didn't like the term Christian band, like, so he was like, oh, well, I guess we're a Christian band. I'm like, no, that's like saying, well, there's 4 vegetarians get together, so it's a vegetarian band. No, it's still a rock band. It's just a bunch of vegetarians. So in the interviews, right? So the interviews, I'd always say well, so you're a Christian band. I said, well, I would say we're a rock band. It would just have to have 4 Christian members. We're all Christians. Versus, I mean, I didn't have that analogy then, but I use different ones. But it's I don't want to say it's like the vegetarian thing. Like, well, we're all vegetarians, so let's call it a vegetarian band. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. But and the problem with that, the problem I had with it, and I think the problem we felt at the time, when you get labeled Christian band. Now at the time, right, there were a lot of Christians that did not like it. Oh, they're satanic. They got a lightning bolt. So lightning bolt over a bull's back is satanic. They wrote all kinds of bad books about us and had us on shows and tried to give us all kinds of, oh, you're terrible. Like, actually, you guys don't know us at all, because MT 24:27, the number on the actual album is Matthew 24:27. For as the lightning comes out of the east, shine into the west. So that was threaded through everything we did to Joey's point. And you can go through all those songs and you'll find stuff in there and you're like, oh, I got it, and you wouldn't get it. But when you get labeled, then you lose your opportunity to witness in certain arenas, right? Sure. And because tomorrow night at Night Train, we're gonna have a Christian band, Stryker. Like, I'm not going to that. I mean, I don't want to go to a bar, drink, and try to pick up girls and stuff and do crazy stuff and listen to a Christian band. I'll go to church phone. So, I never really cared for that, and so we tried to stay. I actually didn't want to ever get pick up that or get labeled like that. But the fact is, that's what we're coined as, right?
Well, it does. Like I said, it does seem a bit more out there, a bit more overt on the first Strike album. So that's, I guess, what I don't have a problem with what you guys did on the Stryker album. I mean, and there's lots of bands nowadays that do that kind of thing that will, kind of what you described, Joey. But I think I was just more so looking at what seems to be a difference between the two where, with the first Strike album, it just seems to be a bit more obvious. Yeah. So
and I think we decided to be in your face and go all in, right, Joe? I think we said, you know what? Let's just take those songs that we've been writing. Let's just take them and let's just be like,
let's crush the head of Satan.
Yeah, that's kind of obvious. Not gonna be able to hide. But see, when you start doing songs like that it's totally scripture stuff, it's not really easy to hide, right? I mean, it's like crush the head of Satan. People are like, oh my God, what kind of band is this? Like, that's just scripture,
Well, Dale and Joey, I mean, I hate to say it, but when you put a full ad, there you go, Joey. Yeah. When y'all put a full ad in a magazine that says God damned Satan and is about to change your life, I mean, that's putting it on your fist, man. That's rock and roll,
Well, and that's, that was really pretty cool because it was pretty controversial.
Yes, it was.
We got a lot of letters on that one.
And that was way back in the 80s, in the magazine.
But it's a true statement. If you say, if you don't say damned, if you say God, whatever, if you say GD, that's taking God's name in vain. But if God damned Satan is about to change your life, that's a fact.
He condemned
and
him.
That's true. But it's a little hard to, So I remember hearing. I'll go back to Lester Roloff. He was the dude like make you think you're hanging over hell with a broken stick kind of thing. But he did something really weird one time. Turns out it wasn't a real Bible, what I thought it was. But he came to my dad's church and he was preaching. He was like, oh, okay, so let's say you don't believe in the virgin birth of Mary. All right, well, let's just tear that out of the Bible. He throws it on people like, I mean, he did some stuff that you'd be like, he goes, and let's say you don't believe, and he just started tearing stuff out like what we thought was they were blank pages later because I had to help clean up the church. But I was like, oh my gosh. But you totally get shocked. And then you go like, he's not really wrong. You can't just say, well, I'm going to believe this piece and that piece.
Right.
But it was a visual, and it was hard, but it was truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I think we said, you know what, we're just going to be who we are. We're just, let's just go. And that's kind of where we ended up. And unfortunately we didn't get to do the rest of those songs, but we might, Joey and I might do it. We might do it. We're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think Rex had something you wanted to say.
Joe,
Yes,
you mentioned about the 4-song demo and when we're going to hear that. So does that mean we're going to hear some unreleased music in the near future from you guys?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, Dale has been handling some of that stuff, so I'll let him pick that up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. One of the things, we found a song called that I wrote called Mama, and we never released it because it just didn't. I think part of the reason, Joey, is we thought it wasn't hard enough, right, for the next album, right? So this isn't gonna be. But I actually went up to the studio a couple of months ago in Austin and remixed it, and so that one's ready to go. That actually that was recorded during the same time as the Blitzkrieg album at Third Coast Studios in Austin, Texas. So we got that one. We've got some others. And who knows, we may work with some people who have kind of helped us keep us around for a while to do some re-release stuff. And so I think you'll hear that one's not anywhere. And that's a fantastic song. Just starts out. I mean, it's just like, Steve wrote, that was amazing.
Well,
amazing.
there'd be interest, I'm sure. And from what Joey said about that 4-song demo, I'm very interested in hearing that. You guys, I hope you do release some stuff.
Was there 7 songs in total with those 4?
Unreleased is what you're talking about?
I thought at the onset of when we started recording, guys, didn't y'all say something about 7 songs in total? So is it the 4 plus 3 more? Somebody mentioned something about 7.
Oh yeah, I said 7 songs. I got to think what's in there.
Well, we're all in. I know that.
It's either going to be, it'll either be 7 or it'll be 9, it'll be whatever. And then Joey and I have some songs that we want to do. We've toyed with the idea of doing. We wrote a lot of songs that could be pretty good acoustically, and we'd share some stuff on that. So I think we might do some of that. Joey, like Valentine's Day and stuff like that. There's some songs out there that I think we'd like to do. Hopefully we can make that happen before, God decides it's time for us to go, leave the earth. But certainly the ones that are already recorded, so they need some touch. Some of them need some touching up, right? And so we need to do that. But we're not gonna be able to touch them, mess with them much, because I mean, one of the I listen to the vocals on the one. I'm like, man, those vocals are pretty good. Pretty good. But it was a scratch. It was recorded as a scratch vocal, and normally we'd go back and try to lay that down 2 or 3 times. We didn't have a lot of money. We were like a lot of the bands back then, right? We were poor, but a lot of times we'd open up and we'd have our our anthem thing, and then we'd say, ladies and gentlemen, the loudest band in the world, or the most sought after band in the world, or the whatever. And I said, maybe we should say we're the poorest band in the world, but there are a lot of poor bands, and so that's probably not even true either. So none of that's true. But I'd like to see us put some of those out if we can. But I don't want to mess with them too much, because they were recorded on tape. There's kind of a raw, even that scratch vocal track. I went and listened to one last night. I think, Joe, I texted you about it, but I listened to it like, wow, that's pretty good for a scratch vocal. I think you could just roll with it. I mean, people just like, that's pretty good.
There's
almost like
something to be said about the authenticity of the original.
Yeah. I think sometimes, so think about this. If you take a song, so let's say Joey and I said, let's go ahead and let's take a song that we never released, that one of these 7 or 8 or 9, whatever there is. So take one of those, and we decide to just completely do it from scratch, relay guitar, it's just not going to be the same. So doing new, it's not gonna be the same as that stuff, I don't think. So do an acoustic version of something or something like that, sure, but I don't know. I just don't think it'd be the same. Go
I
ahead.
want to give you guys the chance to address something just because we're kind of talking about what you got and what you might do and stuff like that. And there's stuff out there on the internet, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to put the record straight or whatever.
It's all true.
Oh, it's all true.
It's on the internet, Michael. It must be true. It's on the internet.
No, is Steve involved anymore at all, or what's up with that?
Steven's not. No, he's not involved. I talked to him and told him about the documentary and stuff. Say, hey, you want to be involved? And he goes, nah, you do. I gave all that to you. Do whatever you want. We're good. He's a pastor. He's a great man. He's my brother, Joey's brother, Christian brother. We love him. He put out his own kind of a single called Steven, I think it was called. I don't remember what it was, and really good stuff on there. And I said, hey, you want to re-release that? And he goes, no, I'm kind of done with that. Okay.
Oh, you're talking about the full. It wasn't a single. It was like.
Oh yeah, he did a whole whole cassette thing, right? Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
There's some good songs on there, and we participated in some of that, but it was good stuff. But he's just like, I think he might change his mind at some point, right? But at this point, he's focused in other areas and on his church and his ministry, and God bless him for that.
So, Dale, one of the things that you mentioned that, you talking about you guys were poor and, didn't have a lot of money. And one of the things that I really dig about you guys, now I like a lot of genres of music, but, one of the genres that I do like, or especially one band, I should say, is punk, and especially the Ramones. I love the do-it-yourself aesthetic of punk, of true, genuine punk. And you guys, to me, are not punk, but there's a punk aesthetic to your music. And this, and viewers out there, this right here, this is First Strike, but it also has, it's the 2009 edition, and it also has the complete Blitzkrieg Stryker material. I love both of it. But chock full of hooks. That's why I love Stryken. You guys had more hooks than a bass fishing tournament. And I can, for any of the production that might be waning, because like you mentioned, Dale, you guys just weren't loaded full of money. But I hear the hooks, and there's this wonderful, genuine, raw aesthetic to your music. And that's what I'm hearing. And I'm hearing these, you were talking about Surprise. That's the Mock the Hoople kind of influence that I was hearing in that song. Guys, you all did it yourself, the DIY mentality. And my case in point, please tell us about Polygraph and Crystal Records. It was your own imprint and the organization. Tell us about that, what you guys were doing back then.
All right. Well, we actually had an opportunity. So let me start with this to sign a number of record deals. We eventually signed because of the the Righteous Metal album, right? With it's ultimately Cartel Records, but they owned Arrival Records, who was released on, and yeah, it's Arrival Records and Dominion Records. And I think we were a little, too naive at the time about what you could get or you couldn't get and stuff like that. But we had Epic, RCA, Cartel, Dominion, and probably should have inked one of those deals. Joey doesn't fault me for any of that. Maybe he should, but never could get those things done. But so we ended up having to say, okay, well, we got to have a record company. So let's start with had Polygraph Records. Crystal Records USA was actually Christ All is the way we'd say it, Christ All Records, but it's pronounced Crystal. And then we actually got a letter because there was another Crystal Records, and said, you can't use that. Oh, okay, we won't use that anymore. Sorry, oops. And then we also had, of course, we had a music, you have to have a music publishing company. So we started AOG Music. You probably didn't know about that. And that was really just all driven from necessity, I think. And, part of the problem is when you don't have a lot of money. I mean, Steve and I were having kids, and, so you're making a little bit of money trying to, sell auto parts at auto parts store. You got kids and you're trying to do that, take care of a wife, and then you're trying to put money in the band. And I know one year, I remember my wife saying, we weren't making a lot of money. So I think it was like $18,000 or $20,000, and said, if we spent 40% on the band, paying payments and doing this, that's tough, man. And we didn't take any assistance or anything from the government or anything, but so we were pretty poor. So we pretty much had to do it like, do our own artwork, our own everything. And it was crazy, but I think it's kind of cool in some ways, right? Because the do-it-yourself, you coined that phrase. And I think that's, I never really thought about the do-it-yourself. I guess that's what it was, but I never really thought about that.
Well, I applaud, Joey, are you fixing to die with the low battery?
Yeah, I don't know why. I've got this thing plugged in. That's bizarre.
You sure it's plugged in? Is the light on?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Are you,
the light.
Are you seeing that Stryken lightning bolt anywhere on your computer that shows you? So, guys, and Joey, if we lose you, please log back on if you can. Okay.
Yeah, I will.
But we got to rock on, as they say, right, gentlemen?
Yeah, we do.
So I'm looking here, guys. This might have been just a year or two ago.
Yep.
So about a year or two ago, you guys were making photographs like this. Y'all donned the armor of God. And, how did you all do this strictly during the Stryken period, or was this also during the Stryker period that y'all did the armor?
No, that was part of the Stryken image.
Okay.
Yeah, we were your typical pop rock band as Stryker. There was a few things that were a little different. Dale had this habit of wearing these, those ski moon boots.
Mm-hmm.
He loved wearing those on stage. But we had our own look as Stryker, but it wasn't like a unified thing like it was with Stryken.
So regarding Stryken, guys, the name change from Stryker to Stryken. And I do want to point out, let me make this very clear to our friends and viewers out there. There is a documentary being made on Stryken/Stryker. And Dale, I think that you said that might be released come August, maybe?
Well, actually, August, we've actually slipped the some of the recording to August. So it'll be after that.
So on Facebook, friends out there, come around August time, Stryken is on Facebook, and stay in tune with them, and they will be releasing updates on when the documentary might be made. And they're going to go into great detail, and correct me, Joey or Dale, where I'm wrong, but the plan is there's a lot of Stryken/Stryker has a very rich and colorful history due to some circumstances, shall we say. So I'm going to ask a few questions here, but they may or may not be able to do a deep dive with us into some things. But it's fascinating. Dale and Joey, your journey is fascinating. And with that said, friends, pay attention to Stryken on Facebook. Be subscribed if you're not. Regarding the name being altered from Stryker to Stryken, Dale and Joey, I can't imagine that was just out of the clear blue. As best as you can answer, was this name change due to another Christian hard rock and metal band which grew increasingly popular during this period and bore a similar name?
Is that eggshells I hear he's walking on?
I'm trying to be respectful for everybody.
Joey probably has a different story, maybe the same story, not story response, but I would say that it's clear that we had the name Stryker, which we had trademarked years ago back in the 70s. We were using the 70s and released stuff, 2 albums, and of course Stryker came out. More power to them, great band, love their music, and I think what we decided to do, in hindsight, it's 2020. Well, we should have just kept Stryker. We did get a fair amount of heat, like, oh, you're copying them, or like, oh, you guys like, and why try to fight that? Why try to defend, defend yourself? Like, okay, whatever. The facts speak for themselves. So thanks for bringing out the facts here. But we decided to change the name, and maybe we should have changed it completely, or maybe we should have stayed with Stryker. These are just things I think about sometimes. We decided at the time, based on the what we had, and we did spend a lot of time praying about it and talking about it amongst ourselves, and we decided to go with Stryken. And maybe that's also to save money, because we're a DIY band. Hey, we could just change that R to an N and keep the lightning bolt. Everything's great. Maybe that was part of it. It probably was part of it, because we were on the cheap, and a complete name change would have been expensive. Bumper stickers, low buttons. We had all kinds of crazy crap, stuff. So, Joey, what would you add to that? Anything?
Okay, so you got the diplomatic answer there. Now you're going to get mine. No, I'm joking. Look, like Dale had mentioned, we were Stryker. The name was copywritten back in 78, 79. We released Blitzkrieg in 83. There was a single released in 79. Striper, that's a story within itself, where how we found out about Striper. Talk about a surreal, mind-blowing moment when you order an album, which is what Steve did. He saw the ad. I don't know where he saw it, but he saw an ad for the Striper album. And he was like, there's a band with our similar name. So he orders the album. We get the album. Steve called us and says, hey, come on over, guys. I got the album in. And we're looking this thing over. And I'm sitting there going, similar name, 2 brothers in the group, Christians.
Yellow and black instead of red and black.
Well, we didn't have that color scheme.
Not in 85.
No, we didn't.
Not in 85. Yeah, that's right.
No, yeah, because we weren't Stryken, and we were still Stryker. And to sit there and go, is it over? Because you're sitting there going, how could this even be? Did we not move fast enough? Did we not answer what God has called us to do? It was just mind blowing. Like Dale was saying, we got ridiculed a lot by people saying we were riding their coat. People still say that. I see people on Facebook on those what is it? Those Christian metal Facebook things, right? And I'm just going to say this, okay, because it really, really just irks me. Those Facebook rooms are nothing but cesspools, because people want to defend something that doesn't even matter in this life.
Amen.
If you're not defending Christ, then who cares? Because Dale, Steve, Robert, and Michael, Oz, me, it doesn't matter. We're all fallible humans that are trying to follow Christ in our own way, the way God has called us to do. But in that time, it seems people want to put people on pedestals, and instead of looking to Christ, instead of looking to the Word of God in order to better their lives with and do something positive. They want to get into arguments about who's a better band, who's a better vocalist, and why are these writing, why is Stryken around? Why, they're riding the coattails of my cherished Stryker. It's like, guys, do you not realize that when Paul says anything other than Christ is dung, you're feeding the crap out to people. So you need to really self-examine yourself before you go shooting your mouths off in these Facebook posts. As far as I'm concerned, I pulled myself out of those things because I couldn't stand how people someone would say one little thing and then you've got like 3 pages of people arguing back and forth. It's like people, it's no wonder people don't take it serious, and I will just do this. I will show you.
There you go. Yep.
That's my bud. Oz is a buddy of mine. We have been for many, many years. So when people want to say, oh, they hate each other, they hate this and blah, blah, dude, get a life. Get out of your mama's basement and quit eating the Doritos and ding dongs. Go get a job and get a life. Okay. Did we have tension at first? Yes, we did. Okay. I mean, that's just the reality that we'll talk about. There was tension there. That's why the name Stryken came about. But in those years, you support each other. But unfortunately, the whole thing with having to defend yourself because somebody popped in and said, oh, but Stryken did it. And you're like, no, we didn't, dude. Let me tell you what happened. It got tiring. And so I guess as a whole, when the idea was brought up back in the early 2000s when I did an interview with a guy for a publication. And he, just like you're finding out right now, I'm one of those people that I want to make sure you fully see the full picture. So I get into details and so forth, and I get long-winded. So this guy does this interview with me, and he gets back with me and says, hey, if it's okay with you, this is really, really good stuff, and I don't want to edit this stuff. I said, dude, do whatever you want to do with it. I don't care. It was like 5 pages of an interview. And so he says, hey, if you ever want someone to help you write a book, he says, dude, you got stories. He says, I want to help you write a book. I thought about it, mulled it over. So once the idea of doing the documentary came along, 2 things came to mind. Number one, is anyone really interested? Number one, they're cool stories because they're very unique. But I think at the end of the day, it was more where, look, let's just do this. Let's talk about it. Let's get it out there once and for all. And that way we don't have to deal with it anymore, because we're talking about something that happened 40 years ago. It's like 40 years ago, but people still want to get into arguments over it. So let's just get it over with. Let's do the documentary. Let's let people see it for themselves. And if they still want to be at each other's throats, well, that's on you.
Yeah, and I think what I'd say, and Joey will give you, he always gives you the straight up, I'm going to, I've been an executive in many companies, and you got to be a little more political sometimes, but that's one thing I appreciate about Joey. I mean, he'll just lay it out there. But the fact of the matter is, in this situation, we were on the same team, right? On the same team with them, with Bloodgood, Baron Cross, Bride, all of them, right? Res Band, Petra, we're on the same team. So anything that's gonna, there's a verse about, avoid, quarrels about genealogy and the law. And why go down that path? It's just a complete waste of time, right? And so, what are the 5 things we can agree on, right? Hey, we're all trying to do the same thing, right? We're always all trying to preach the gospel, all trying to share our faith. We're all, trying to make things, make Christ known. And so we're on the same team. So let's just move on. And I've never really addressed this at all, actually, on any show publicly in writing at all. Joey's had to kind of deal with it. I'm like, oh, there's our historian. Talk to him. Yeah, send him an email. Yeah, here's his email. Here's his cell phone number. Joey's like, don't do that ever again. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. But I don't like. We're on the same team, so let's just get past it.
So, Dale and Joey, one of the things that I want to say, and I'm going to get just a little personal here from my perspective, but I remember my first encounter with Stryken was back in '87. If going on all these years of memory, I believe it was Metal Edge magazine, and it may have been Jerry Miller because Jerry did so much with Metal Edge. I think it was with Metal Edge, and there was a spread. It was on Stryken along with Messiah Prophet and Bloodgood, and I'm trying to think of who else. Maybe Baron Cross, I think.
I think so, yeah.
This is where it gets personal with me. And my very first encounter musically was later on that year through Righteous Metal. That's the first time I was able to hear you guys with Rock On and in Philadelphia and a few other bands. But what I want to say, well, I love your all's music. It was like a year or two later that I had your red cassette in my hand finally, the full first Strike album. But it wasn't until this past year that I got to hear Blitzkrieg, which, I'm fond of all of it. Back then, gentlemen, we didn't have the social media like we do today. And social media, like anything, like music, it can be a tool for good or bad, for ill or for a good purpose.
Right.
Back in '87, when I was a youngster, when I was 16 years old, as a matter of fact, in 1987, and I first saw this article, and information wasn't like it is today. I want to issue you, Joey and Dale, an apology from my heart, because back then I did not give you guys a fair shake. I saw the name Stryken, and like so many, like you kind of alluded to, Dale, there were a lot of us young people who thought you guys were simply riding the coattails of Stryker, which I do love and support, just like I do you guys. I have no, ill with anybody, but back then I didn't give you guys the chance that you all deserved. I didn't know all of the information is what I'm trying to say. So I jumped to a conclusion. From my heart, Dale and Joey, and to you, Stephen, and to you, Ezekiel, I wish to personally apologize because I had jumped to a conclusion and it was a wrong assumption. And years later, when I was able to simply find out the whole of the matter, I'm like, I was wrong about some things all these years ago. And I was finally able to listen to Stryken with my whole heart. And I love you guys. I love your message. I love your music. I love the strength that you all had on a small time budget to do it yourself and to follow the Lord and to deliver some great songs. And Dale and Joey and Stephen and Ezekiel, I'm asking if you all would please accept my genuine apology. That's not the only reason why we were wanting to have you on the show, but I simply needed to say that. And friends out there, my brothers or sisters in Christ, maybe you're like me and maybe you kind of made it an assumption that you found out not to be true. And I'm just encouraging you guys to give these guys a re-listen because this is worthwhile material. And, nobody here is against Striper. Nobody here is against Stryken. Like you mentioned, Dale and Joey, we're all on the same team. We all are all
Amen to that.
serving the risen Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who deserves all praise, blessing, honor, glory, power forever. I just needed to say that, Dale and Joey, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say thank you, brothers, and I love you guys.
Well, thank you, man. And look, kiss the ring.
Okay, Pope Joey.
No, I appreciate it, Ken. It's not really, not necessary. You're a brother in Christ. All of you, we just thank you for even having us on. I mean, we don't exist, right, except for people like you kind of keep us alive. There's some guys that kind of kept our music alive. We had some super fans that have done some, just like kept us alive on all these different things, had websites up about us, rogue websites. We had, guys like Matt Hunt was just, helped us just kind of keep stuff alive, and we're like just kind of going like, and so things like this are really appreciated, and I think we should do, another one at some point, 6 months from now, maybe, or 8 months, whenever we get closer, because you guys you obviously have a following. And, if I put on my Facebook, I told you I had maybe 100 people, but they all just like, oh, remember me? I'm like, so I don't really want a Facebook page. So I'm happy to let someone else have a Facebook page and reach out, to people. And you can do things that we can't do. And we appreciate that. And it's not about the money, right? Because we don't make enough from Spotify and Apple Music and Pandora and all that. We don't make enough money off of that to pay for a meal at Whataburger, or Chick-fil-A, in a month. And so, but it's for posterity. And you always hope that if someone's listening to that and they might go like, hey, what's this? They might be having a down moment or something. Because most of our songs, even the Stryker stuff, there's always a thread of, there's talking about situations in life, hard times, rough times, struggles. But at the end, what we're always trying to do is provide hope and a direction, right, to Christ. So that's what we've always tried to do, either subtly or in your face. And I don't see that changing about our character until they put me in a box. So, but thank you.
Oh, you bet. And guys,
not necessary, but thank you for that.
Well, go ahead.
I want to give you a quick sidebar little story, because Dale said, we don't make enough money to eat at Whataburger on the deal. So in the early days, what we would do is we would sell stuff to get gas money and stuff like that. And that's where I learned my trade in being a salesman. So
swap meets and stuff, right?
Now Stryken, I remember one time, I think it was on our way back from San Antonio from the Motley Crue thing. We stopped in and we were, no, it was something different. Anyway, long story short, we stopped in at a restaurant, and we, our road manager at the time says, hey, I'll be right back. Took a bunch of albums and some 8x10s, walked into the Denny's or something like that. Basically, he struck up a deal with the manager that night. Hey, if you let my guys eat for free, I'll have them come in and sign these albums and 8x10s for you, and you can have those. Boom, we got to eat. So now travel back to Stryker when we were at Third Coast Studios, and we were recording the Blitzkrieg album. So we had to do in both cases with Stryken and Stryker, we had to do the night shift recordings because it was the only way we could get into the studio.
10 p.m. to 3 a.m. or some crap like that.
Yeah. And especially because Third Coast Studios was a very, very big hub for up and coming and established artists at the time. So one night we get in, and I don't remember if it was the engineer or somebody says, hey, Budweiser was in here earlier and they heard you guys were going to be doing a session tonight. So they left you something in the storage. So we go back there, no joke. There was 20 cases of Budweiser for us.
And I don't drink, so I didn't.
And it's
at the
like,
time.
so it's like, what are we going to do with this? So I think like halfway into the session, you know, we're starving to death. And we called up a Pizza Hut nearby and we struck up a deal to get 3 large pizzas, some drinks for like 5 or 6 of the cases of beer. So Steve and I went to go pick up the pizzas. We unloaded the beer and the manager, Steve is talking with the manager and telling them who we are. And this is why we're giving up on the beer kind of thing. And so we're driving down the road, heading back to the studio. And Steve says, hey man, pop one of those open. I got to eat now. So I popped it open and there's a Ziploc bag on top of the pizza. And I was like, what the heck is this thing? Grabbed it, opened it, and it was like $40 that the manager put into it. And he left a little note, and I don't remember verbatim what it said, but something to the effect of, I support you guys. Here's a little something extra for you.
Nice.
And, you know, just our lives have been just a plethora of just these awesome little stories of things that God, you know, put us in the way of.
We'd buy and sell toolkits. We'd buy and sell speakers for cars. We'd put them in your car.
Oh yeah.
Trying to survive, trying to get gas to get from this show to the next thing, and just crazy stuff. So, but you know what? I guess that kind of stuff builds character, and you appreciate those times, right?
And I am a character.
And you also want to, it makes you think about others, right? To think about, you go to work sometimes, right? And maybe somebody's not having a good day and someone doesn't maybe treat you well. And you're like, I wonder what's going on in their life, right? Instead of like, well, how dare them? How dare them? I mean, it's like, you know, look at, maybe they had like a pretty rough day. Maybe something happened. You don't know. And maybe they can't pay the bills. You don't know. So you really need to think back. And I think it always helps me kind of remember where I came from. My grandpa Barry would always say, remember where you came from. Never forget where you came from.
Dale was mentioning the stories, and Joey, you had alluded to the Motley Crue incident. And I just want to ask, without deep diving, but 2 renowned stories of Stryken. I'm just wondering if there's any truth to any of these, and maybe we can find out in the documentary, but 2 renowned stories. One involved something about you guys being in police custody at a Motley Crue concert in '87. The other story is something about, 35 years ago or something, you all maybe challenging WASP to a public debate on television. Is there any truth to any of those stories or incidents?
You know what's funny about that whole thing is that after the Motley Crue thing happened, there was this widespread of folklore stories of what actually happened. I remember it was like a month or 2 after it happened, there was a publication, some Christian publication, and they said that we had taken a 10-foot cross into the venue, set it on fire, and threw it up on the stage, and wanted to get into a fist fight with Motley Crue. To this day, this is no joke, one of my absolute friends, Doug Pinnock of King's X, to this day, he still tries to tell people, yeah, these guys are the ones that try to challenge Motley Crue to a battle of music. I'm like, dude, that didn't happen, man. I said, remember we did this, we did this. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, never mind. So you're asking if it's true. So I still have the marks of the handcuffs. Back then cops were not so nice, hey, are those okay? Are they too tight? No.
What I'm asking Joey is, was there something, and we'll kind of save it for the documentary. I realize you all need to, did you all wind up in some manner in police custody at a Motley Crue concert?
Look, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So
Short version, Joey.
do you need if you need to go take a bathroom break, Dale, go ahead.
Do I need to pause this for a minute, guys?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Joey's just trying to get rid of me,
No. Look, the absolute truth of the matter is this. We were approached early that week by Steve. Steve had this idea because he was very angry at the fact that Motley Crue was coming into Texas, especially our hometown of Austin. And he was just really upset about it. And he said, we need to make a statement. So that's basically what ended up happening. Is initially Steve and I did it in Austin the first time, where we took a cross and we were outside the venue. A bunch of kids came up and we had the cross, and we had like 50 albums each that we handed out to kids, and then the cops came and we left. The Motley Crue show went to San Antonio, and not to get into details, the four of us ended up going to this thing, but this time we were all decked out in our stage outfits, makeup, hair, and the whole shebang.
Yeah, I wanted a bigger cross too. I thought your cross was too small at the last event, remember?
So we had a bigger cross.
I mean, you need a bigger cross.
Well, because this time we had 4 guys carrying the cross, not 2, right?
Yeah, but it worked against us because it was hard to get racked to get into the door. So it was a whole other issue. But anyway, we never made it that far.
I don't know about that. We showed up. There was news cameras there. We were talking with kids, and there was a group of kids that ended up tearing their Motley Crue tickets up and ended up going home, and some of them stuck around. And so after I think Whitesnake was opening for them, and so the show was starting. So it had emptied out into the venue, and we felt at the time that God was saying, hey, take the cross inside. So that's what we did. We started walking towards the venue, and you know how the venues have those corridors inside before you get to the actual arena. We start walking towards it, and it's like, is this thing going to actually fit in this doorway? And somehow, some way, we slanted it, and it just went right through. We start going through the corridor, and when I say that God had a hand in this, we had 6, maybe 8 police officers around us, and they were saying, hey, you need to stop. You need to stop. But they didn't do anything. They just kept saying, you need to stop. So there was this big old bunch of kids hanging out outside of the actual doors of the arena. We walked up, we looked at it and said, okay. So we raised the cross and we put it up against one of the doors, and we stood away. So the cops are then saying, hey, you need to remove that thing. It goes against penal code, blah, 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 yada, 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 blah, 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 right? We're like, nah, well, if you want to remove it, you do it. We're just doing what we're told. And so somehow, some way, I mean, it was really bizarre. Somehow, some way, we got split off, the 4 of us. And each one of us was surrounded by cops. And each one of us was being told, you need to remove that cross right now. And he said, and for me, the guy's saying, are you going to remove that cross? I said, no, sir, I can't. I said, respectfully, I can't. And I kind of
It's
looked.
too heavy. It's too heavy. I can't.
I looked over and I see
Poor guys.
these guys starting to get handcuffed. He says, turn around. He spun me around, put my hands and slapped on the cuffs. And like I was saying, jokingly, but it wasn't a joke. When they put handcuffs on you back then, they put those handcuffs on you.
Those are nice cuffs, though.
Yeah,
I'm glad they didn't use zip ties. I mean, I kind of like it, but they did cut into your wrists a little bit. You know?
Yeah. Now, were we arrested? No, we were not arrested. We were detained outside the venue in a caged off area. It was like a fenced off area where they detained us. And then roughly about 40 minutes into it, God sent a Christian man who was the captain of the police, who was heading out the security for the night. And he flat out said to us, he says, look, unprofessionally, I completely support what you're doing. Completely. Professionally, I'm going to make this deal with you. If you guys give me your word that you're going to leave and not come back, you guys are free to go. But if you guys come back, I'm going to arrest you. Said, fair enough. Because at that time we realized we did what God told us to do. Anything else above that would be taking it into our own hands. So yeah, that's the shaved off version of what happened that night. And the whole thing with Wasp, and if you want to tell that one, Dale.
No, I'll let you tell that one, but I want to comment on the other one. But there's footage. We tried to find the footage, and the TV shows are like, the news channels like, that'd be like in something someplace, and we're again trying to find any records of that, because it'd be kind of cool to have the video, right? I mean, that would be really cool, especially for a documentary. But so far we've been unsuccessful. I guess we need somebody who's smarter at it than we are, some kind of a bulldog person or a journalist that knows, but I haven't been able to find that. But that'd be kind of cool, I think, if we could ever locate somebody.
It would be really cool to see that, because I could see if that blush that I was working with actually worked on me. But I digress.
Go to Wasp.
Here's the reality for me of why it even mattered that we did anything like that. Because it can be looked at as a publicity stunt and so forth. The reality was, while we were handcuffed, about 15, 20 feet away from us was a kid who either was so inebriated by the amount of alcohol he had already taken in, or drugs on top of that, who knows. He was passed out on the concrete slab in front of us, about 20 feet away. He was laying on top of his own vomit, is basically what was happening. And after they uncuffed us, we had made the agreement with the captain and said, hey, would you allow us just one thing? And he said, what is it? Can we just go over there and pray for him? And he said, absolutely. That, to me, if anything was supposed to happen that day, was that we were supposed to be there at that moment to see that kid there, for us to be able to pray over him. And who knows what may have transpired from that, because he was passed out. But I believe that when the hands touch someone and the spirit is there, because again, when two or more are gathered in the name of Christ, he is there also. He was there and he was listening. Who knows what may have happened with that kid? And maybe one day we'll find out. But if anything was to happen, is that we were supposed to be there at that moment for that kid. To answer real quick, the whole Wasp and Motley Crue thing, yes, that was another thing that was brought up that we did. We had challenged Wasp and Motley Crue to meet us on the Phil Donahue show, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And some new show called the Oprah Winfrey Show. And we issued the challenge, we issued the challenge to the managements of both groups and sent the letter to the Oprah Winfrey Show and the Phil Donahue Show. And we never really heard from the management groups, but we heard back from Phil Donahue and Oprah saying, not really the angle we want to go with, but thanks, thanks for playing, kind of thing. So that's basically what happened.
I got you. Well, it's interesting because Blackie Lawless is a Christ follower. He's returned to his faith in the Lord, and I think that's so awesome.
That it is amazing, and it just shows the power of perseverance of people praying, and the awesomeness of the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just mind blowing.
One of my
go ahead.
One of my favorite bands growing up was Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Mark Farner, of course, his testimony, we had, I don't know, some crazy amount, like $23 million wasted all on stuff. And anybody, he just tells a story. It's just amazing. And love that guy. And so kind of had it all, and but didn't really have anything right. And turned to Christ is fantastic.
Oh,
A side note, in all the years that I've spent in music and the music industry, Mark Farner, I got to meet him back in 90. It was like 90, 91. I got to meet him. He did a show in Austin, and I got to meet him afterwards. And I can honestly say there's maybe a handful of people that I've met in the industry that was as genuine and such a great guy as Mark Farner. Great guy, man.
Look away, it's a long time. Look ahead, it's a hard time. Look away, it's a long time. Slip away, and now that I've got you.
Joey, do you still have more of these for sale personally on the Stryken Facebook page?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so friends out there, and I ordered mine from Joey and Dale. They both signed it, as you can see, this past December. But these are pretty much sold out everywhere that you go. I know that all of us are fans and friends of Boone's Overstock and Girder and Rocks. They're all sold out, friends. However, if you go to the Stryken Facebook page, you can send them a message. I promise you that Joey and Dale, Joey, I believe, kind of manages that. He is so quick to respond. This is the first Strike Collector's Edition that has not one, but both albums on there of the Stryker Blitzkrieg and the Stryken First Strike album. So you get two albums on one. And I think, Joey, the pricing on this, if it's unsigned, it's 20, and if it's signed, is it 30? Is that right?
Correct. Plus,
Okay, so
plus
friends,
the
you can
shipping.
PayPal Joey, and he will send you the information for that as you ask for this. So there you go on that. I just want to say also that Dale and Joey, to me, a mark of a band's, a testament of a band's how they've touched people is whenever your album it's remastered and made available again. Your all's material, not only once but twice. This is the second edition of this. The first time with both albums, I should say. There was another collector's edition before this. Twice you guys have been reissued, and this is done by both on the same one, Retroactive and Girder. So that's something right there. You guys have made a lasting impression, Dale and Joey and Stephen and Ezekiel. Just wanted to say thank you. And Dale and Joey, if you guys could make a brief statement to your fans and friends out there to leave a lasting impression to them, what would you wish to tell them?
Dale?
Joey. I'm thinking I was going to let you go. You guys got it right there. That's on the tip of your tongue. For me, it'd probably be short and sweet. One of the things that we always referred to our fans as, we always called them allies, because we're on the same team, same fight, right? So if you go back, we said, hey, you want to be an ally? And it was pretty common for me. Someone asked me for my autograph. I'd say, I will, but only if I can have yours as well. And so I would say to our allies, brothers and sisters in Christ, those who are not yet believers, but are fans, just, hey, thank you for all the years, all the support. We love you, man. It's been fantastic ride. And thanks to you, and Michael and Rex for having us. I mean, you guys keep this thing going. You mentioned the 2 releases. I mean, we can't do that without help and someone believing in us. And so, hats off to, again, the Matt Hunts and the Greg Hayes because they put those out there. So fantastic. So love the fans. Thanks for support.
I think the only thing that I would have to say is we're right now we are living in very strange times. And if people don't recognize the fact that it is ramping up with so much evil in this world, and we very likely are living in what is known as the end times, we need to, more than ever, stop bickering, stop grandstanding, wrap yourself around the greatest commandment ever given. Love God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Because when you're doing those things, you're not having time to fight or bicker or get into any arguments with anybody. You're too busy loving God, and you're too busy doing what God has called you to do. That's what we're here for. We're here to do what God is not asking, but it's what we're his vessels. Plain and simple, we're vessels. You're either a vessel for God or you're a vessel for yourself, which basically comes down to being evil. Love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Go out and be Christ to somebody. Because if they don't see Christ in us, they don't see Christ. They don't see him. So that's my thoughts. That's my delivery to you guys, to everybody out there. Just go be Christ. Go love on somebody. Go, like Dale was saying, somebody may be having a bad day. Don't take it personal. Find out why they're having a bad day, and then turn that around and let them see Christ, that Christ is putting his arms around them. How many times have we had that done to us? But yet we don't want to do that to others. So I love everybody. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for even approaching us and asking us to do this. We're very thankful. We're grateful. And, hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Our door is always open to you guys. Thank you all for the privilege of getting to fellowship with you all. And Dale and Joey, before we completely dismiss, Mike, he's our resident minister. He's a minister of the Lutheran Church in Minnesota. We always ask Mike to do a little bit of scripture closeout, because we believe God's word is the ultimate authority, and that's where the power lies. But Mike's going to do some scripture closeout, and Joey and Dale, if y'all don't mind, just hang around one more moment after we sign off. So,
absolutely.
All right, Mike, take us home, buddy.
Yeah, so I always try to find something that's in some way relevant to the band or artists we're talking to. And just so happens that your first Strike album begins with a song called Crush the Head of Satan. And that comes from Genesis 3:15, which is the Bible's very first prophecy of Messiah. So it's very, very important. And I'm going to go ahead and read that. It says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, talking to the serpent, and between your offspring and hers. he will crush your head and you will strike his heel. And also has the word strike in there for you. But that's important because it tells us about what's to come. Way back there at the beginning, it talks about the serpent, the deceiver, who deceived the woman and caused the fall to begin with her and Adam. And he's basically saying, God is basically saying, you know, you're going to continue to do this. You're going to continue to try and bring destruction upon mankind. But the woman is going to, her posterity, the woman is going to have a son, because it says here, between your offspring and hers, he will crush your head. So it prophesies that there will be a son to come from the woman who will crush the head of Satan, just as you guys said in your song.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Great.
Amen to that.
So, friends out there, it's been our privilege to have Dale Stryker and Joey Knight, and we also want to say thank you for the great music and message to Ezekiel Bade and Stephen Stryker. Again, friends, on Facebook, I will put the link in the description to the Stryken page on Facebook. And if you wish to, you can order this, a few still left, the collector's edition of First Stryken Blitzkrieg. Also keep checking the Facebook page, Stryken Facebook page, for updates for the forthcoming documentary. That'll be very interesting, as well as something I'm excited about and news to me today, these new songs that Dale and Joey were talking about. I'm very interested in those. So Dale, Joey, thank you, gentlemen, and we'll just sign off to our friends. Stick around for one more moment.
Thank you.
Joey. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
God gave rock and roll to you, gave rock and roll to you, put it in the soul of everyone.